Welcome to From My Table, a journal exploring wine, culture, hospitality, creativity, and the art of gathering. I'm Liz Ogumbo, and on today's journal is Meaningful Conversations, the things we say when nobody is watching. There are conversations I remember, not because of what was said, but because of what became possible after it was said. A question asked without an agenda, a confession offered without preparation, a story that began somewhere ordinary and somehow led somewhere neither person expected. Sometimes the most important conversations begin when we stop trying to have an important conversation. They happen between courses, at the edge of a dinner table, in the car on the way home, over the last glass of wine when everyone has stopped checking the time. There is something about an unhurried table that allows people to become less edited. We arrive carrying our carefully assembled selves, the professional self, the impressive self, the composed self, the person who knows what to order and exactly what to say. And then someone asks a question that wasn't on the menu. What are you really thinking? What happened? What do you miss? What are you looking forward to? And suddenly, the evening changes. The conversation becomes less about exchanging information and more about revealing something of ourselves. Catherine Blythe in The Art of Conversation explores conversation as something more than communication, a way of connecting, discovering, turning an ordinary encounter into something memorable. I think sometimes we forget that we have become remarkably good at communicating. Messages, emails, voice notes, comments, reactions. Yet conversation asks something different from us. It asks us to remain, to listen without composing our response, to allow another person's thought to finish before we decide what we think about it. That sounds simple. It isn't. Michael Nichols and Martha B. Strauss explore this beautifully in The Lost Art of Listening, reminding us that truly hearing another person is far more difficult and far more consequential than simply waiting for a turn to speak. Perhaps this is why the best tables rarely feel hurried. Nobody is trying to win. Nobody is watching the clock. Nobody is counting how many minutes remain before the evening becomes tomorrow. There is simply enough room, enough silence, enough curiosity, enough time for somebody to say something they had not intended to say. And perhaps this is also why food has always played such a powerful role in human connection. Across cultures, eating together has never been merely about nourishment. It's an act of gathering, of exchange, of belonging. The global slow food movement has long championed the idea of conviviality, bringing people together around food while valuing local culture, biodiversity, and the communities that sustain them. There is a word I love in all of this. It suggests something more generous than simply being together. It suggests enjoying one another, making room, sharing, staying. That is what a good table does better than almost any other space. It lowers the distance between people. A CEO and an artist, a stranger and an old friend, a parent and a child. Two people meeting for the first time. For a little while, the hierarchy disappears. There is only the conversation. And sometimes that's where the real luxury begins, not in what has been prepared, but in what becomes possible. I have sat at tables where very little was said, and others where we talked until the candles burnt low. I've also shared meals with people whose lives were completely different from mine, different countries, different languages, different histories, and yet, somewhere between the first question and the last glass, The distance disappeared. Not because we agreed on everything, but because we became curious about one another. That distinction matters. The purpose of conversation is not always agreement. Sometimes it's understanding. Sometimes it's simply allowing another person to exist in front of you without immediately trying to categorize them. Perhaps that is why the most memorable conversations rarely follow the script. They wander, they pose, they surprise us, they take a turn we didn't expect, and sometimes they leave us with a thought we carry home. Long after the plates have been cleared, long after the bottle is empty, long after the table has been reset for someone else. I think of those moments as little gifts. Not because they were profound at the time, but because they became meaningful later. A sentence, a laugh, a question, a moment of silence that somehow said more than words could. We may not remember every conversation, but we remember the people who made us feel safe enough to have one. And maybe that's the real art, not knowing exactly what to say, but creating enough space for something true to be said. So the next time you find yourself around a table with people you don't know well yet, perhaps resist the temptation to fill every silence. Ask one more question. Listen a little longer. Put that phone away. Let the conversation wander. You may discover that the evening you thought would be about dinner was really about meeting someone. And sometimes, the most beautiful conversations are the ones nobody planned to have. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most beautiful conversations are the ones nobody planned to have.